Hello everybody, welcome out to another Comic Drake Interviews, and I am sitting down with one of my favorite writers of all time, Christopher Hastings. How are you doing?
Well, pretty good with that lovely compliment. Thank you.
No, I mean every single word of it.
Thanks.
Well, today I figured we'd sit down and talk about, honestly, what I consider to be one of the greatest books, if not the greatest book that Marvel's putting out right now, Gwenpool. People have heard me gush about it on a regular basis here on the channel, even to the point where I've had some fan art done where like I am holding Gwenpool comics and stuff. People are really starting to keep the two related. So
that's awesome. Thank you.
It's a real honor to have you sitting down, and I'm really excited to dive more into this series that I'm really just a huge fan of.
Great. Well, I love to talk about it. So.
Fantastic. And to anybody watching, and for you, of course, this is all a very thrown together setup, so we're figuring it out as we go along. So
we have approximately 12 computers recording this conversation in some form.
Exactly. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my first question, which is, so you've obviously been the writer of Gwenpool since her first appearance in as a backup story in Howard the Duck. So how and why did you come up with the direction that you took with the character, since she pretty much just appeared as a one-off variant cover back in 2015?
Right. So you're all familiar that like her first appearance was on that cover where she was basically a Gwen Stacy Deadpool mashup. And then all this fan art started coming out. People started cosplaying as her, and Marvel said, okay, well, maybe we should make this a real character. And they have a history of coming to me with the weirder ideas sometimes. Stuff like
Vote Loki.
Vote Loki. Yep. Long Shot saves the Marvel Universe. I'm happy to take something and say, yeah, let's try to figure out a way to make this work. So that's what I did, and then part of the assignment was she would not be a Gwen Stacy, and she would not be related to Deadpool because, we don't need to do another Spider-Gwen. Spider-Gwen already exists, and we don't need to have another Lady Deadpool, and a variety of other reasons. So I took a look at that costume, and took a look at that name, and I started trying to think of what the expectations would be from that character, while also making her own thing. And, a lot of that was informed by Deadpool kind of stuff, like, the violence, the mercenary thing, the fourth wall breaking. And I really latched onto that. And then, kind of thinking with that, I was like, oh, but what if she broke the fourth wall because she knew she was in a comic book because she's from the real world? And then not only that, we get to see somebody who is sort of a mercenary character with zero skills whatsoever, trying to make it along with plot armor, basically. Mm-hmm. And that was pretty much the core of everything the character has had out of it since. And then, in a meeting with the editors, we're like, what if her name's just literally Gwen, last name Pool? Stick an E on it. So that's how the whole thing started off.
No, that's completely fantastic. So a lot of Gwenpool's success as a character, into even being included as a recurring member of the Marvel Universe, came from that fan outreach, kind of like how Spider-Gwen became, as she was going to be a one-shot character in Spider-Verse, and then Tumblr and everybody else picked up how cool her costume is, and now she has her own ongoing series. It's actually the second volume of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's actually insane, and obviously I know that in one of the Gwenpool issues, Deadpool, who she interacts with, talks about how it was kind of an experimental thing, and that's why they ran her in the back of Howard the Duck at first, see if people latch onto the character.
Some of my favorite things about writing her is I can tell the complete truth about the behind the scenes stuff, because she latches onto it, and that's part of her reality extends beyond the comic universe. It does extend a bit to what the creation of the comics is like. So yeah, they tested her out in the back of Howard the Duck to see if she could get her own series.
Well, so it's you're using Gwenpool as a little bit of a way to deliver your own commentary on the industry as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you ever have to tiptoe around things that with Marvel would say, don't do this, please?
I'll come at. So far, I've come to them with stuff that we're doing, and my editors be like, let's check in first, because we understand this is a meta comic, but we don't necessarily want to reveal X or Y. So far, I'm getting away with all of it. Nothing has been turned down.
Really?
Yes.
That's fascinating.
We've got, yeah. Well, we've got some pretty crazier stuff coming up in this current arc where she's discovering more that she is in an actual physical comic book.
Oh, trust me, I'm going to tear into that a little later in this interview.
Yeah, well, we take things to a whole new level beyond that last issue where she first discovers it. And that's kind of the stuff I'm like, wow, I can't believe they let me do this. Okay, great.
Dude, that is incredibly awesome. So one of the defining moments of this current Unbelievable Gwenpool run that I think the internet has kind of latched onto as well, is that Gwen does not read Deadpool. And I think that's very interesting because I have been very vocal about how I'm not much of a Deadpool fan for literally the exact same reasons that she's mentioned. And so was there any particular reason that Gwen was prompted to not read Deadpool as part of her character? And in another sense, is it not a bit of a slap to the face to potential readers that might have picked up her book for the similarities that the two might share?
Well, I mean, first off, I gotta give credit. The person who suggested that was the Deadpool editor, Jordan White.
Really?
Yeah, he like, I think he even said the email straight up like, LOL Mimi, I think was like, and I was just like, that is so perfect, we absolutely have to run with that, because this was one of the problems we ran into with the character was that, like, she, like, was trying to figure out what her relationship with Deadpool would be, because, like I said, we didn't want her to be a Deadpool character, but if she's this total fan, and she is this kind of funny, like, you know, gun-loving mercenary, it would, on a very A level, it would make sense that she was into Deadpool, but it was Jordan's idea. Is like, why don't we just flip it? Just say she's not, and then we ran with that.
Well, have you had a good reception because of that, or have people?
Oh, people love that. Yes,
okay.
Like I don't think I heard from anybody who reads the comic who didn't think that moment was funny. And I think that we were able to make it make sense, you know, in the context of her fandom. But like you're saying, you're worried about insulting people who came over to Deadpool. I suppose it could be possible, but none of those people have reached out to me. And fans certainly will tell me when they have a problem with something.
Oh, that's the beauty of the internet for you. Instant feedback in all the best and worst ways. Well, another question.
Yeah, sometimes I just don't go on Twitter on Wednesdays.
Yep, that sounds about right. So, okay, this actually brings up another interesting question, though, is that since Gwen doesn't read Deadpool, are there any other Marvel books that she skipped that she may not be as familiar with?
Anything that she wouldn't read is honestly informed by stuff that I don't necessarily read. Sometimes I do have to go do research, but anything else I've kind of just... Her gaps are just things that I've forgotten about, too. And sometimes I have to be careful because a lot of the stuff that she says about comics is informed by, like, my experiences reading comics when I was her age, but I'm much older than her, so I have to kind of keep checking in because her point of reference as a reader is different than mine. Like, I doubt she read the same Spider-Mans in the 90s that I did. I'm not sure how old she would have been, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, that actually brings up another interesting point, though, is that do you see Gwenpool as a little bit of a self-insert, at least with your opinions on the industry? Because like you said, it is your way of giving your commentary on the whole state of the comic book industry. But also, are you able to really work in your own taste? And do you kind of see Gwen as a young female avatar of yourself in a sense?
Is she my Mary Sue?
That was I was trying to get around saying that, but yes.
You know, I'll be completely honest. In some ways, she is, but a lot of the stuff, like when I have her being all smarty pants about like commenting on like tropes and sort of the reality of making a comic, it's way more fun whenever I have her be wrong.
Okay.
Like, she has a general idea about something, and then the universe comes out and tells her she's wrong. The best example is in the first issue where she thinks she has her hacker sidekick in Cecil, but actually Cecil is there to get fridged by MODOK.
Yep. I loved that moment, by the way, whenever she was thinking that MODOK was just going to be this low-tier villain that she could easily take. I think that really helped sell the reality of everything.
Yeah, thank you. That was a real, like, critical moment of, like this is what we're doing. So that was nice. Other stuff, though, where she's very much like me, like the issue where you get to see what her home life was like. I was not as pathetic as Gwen was, but like I remember, like, I worked in a movie theater. my dad was not happy with the amount of hours I was working on for a summer break, and he like was mad that I wasn't doing a good enough job applying for. Like he came in with a stack of resumes, or not resumes, job applications, and like that is like straight out of when I was her age. Like I tried like finding a waiter job in New York. Like her stuff about talking about that was very much informed by that experience. So like I definitely get in there sometimes.
Yeah. Well, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
That's it. No.
Okay. Well, so you mentioned that a lot of what Gwen knows is a little bit about kind of what you grew up with. Have you ever wanted to work with a character or concept in the series and had to do more research because you weren't as familiar with the subject as you might have thought, or has everything just been right off the top of your head because you've been a fan of comics for a good while?
All the time. MODOK is a particularly good example. I originally wanted her first arc to be centered around a relationship that she would not a romantic relationship, but like with Bullseye. Bullseye was going to basically play the part in the story that MODOK eventually did, and it was originally going to be a much darker humor, and then when they said no, we're using Bullseye for something else, they said, how about MODOK? And I didn't really know anything about MODOK. And then I went and I read, Secret Avengers, I think. He has a very cool arc. Yeah. And that really informed how I wrote MODOK. But yeah, I had to go off and do all my own MODOK research. And thank goodness we did, because I think the comic is a lot better for it. A lot of the decisions that pushed the book towards a lighter tone, particularly hiring Gurihiru, I think made it all the better.
Well, that actually ties in really neatly with a question that I was going to ask a little bit later, but let's go ahead and do it now. So,
yes.
Well, wow, I have to find it in my notes for a second.
No problem.
Okay, so what encouraged you to really feature lesser-known characters such as MODOK and Batroc? Because, like, obviously, the editors were suggesting MODOK for you since you couldn't use Bullseye, but are there any particular reasons why you're choosing on Batroc, for example, the Leaper?
Yeah, so the using Batroc, I've always wanted to write Batroc. I tried to put him in a story since the very first one that they hired me on. But yeah, that came from, like, with putting MODOK in the book, kind of got me thinking more about, like, what it means to be a joke character, especially since Gwenpool is a joke character. I mean, and Batroc is another one, and he was just like another way to sort of explore this idea of, you know, you're a fictional character, you're maybe not one taken seriously outside of your actual your fictional reality, but you are a person, basically. And Batroc was sort of, he's this lens that I sort of used to focus in on that idea, which is one of the major themes of Gwenpool. But
yeah, I think I actually heard you talk a bit about that in an interview you did, I want to say like a year or two ago at, I forgot which comic convention it was, but you were going into a bit of how like he is a actual person, you're showing that he has more than just the villainous side of him being a butt to Captain America's jokes.
Right.
Yeah, I thought that was really fascinating, and it's actually one of the reasons I wanted to include that question in here. But another one that I have, what is Gwen's favorite character in Marvel Comics? Like, who is her all-time favorite? She knows every little thing. Like, she knows their great uncle's dog and stuff, because it gets really into those wiki dives.
It's probably Peter Parker.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm going to say Miles Morales is a close second.
And that's what I was wondering, because you guys decided to do a team of Miles Morales. So why Miles instead of Peter?
They're closer in age.
That's fair.
Yeah, you know, it was like I was reading the Miles Morales stuff at the time, and I really like the sort of fresh modern take on what it's like being the teenage Spider-Man. And I thought it was just like, it just felt like an easier match. Like, you know, if I were to do a story with Peter Parker, I'd have to have like Gwen go off to, you know, what is it, Parker Industries, or yeah, you know, it'd be a completely different story than just like you know, two teens doing, you know, it's just like I wanted to have this messed up take on like a team up, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think their dynamic was fantastic, especially with
thanks.
how like Miles is kind of there holding her back, like, oh, you can't do this, whereas Gwen is more morally gray.
Yeah, for sure. And there's plenty more of Miles showing up in the comic later on.
That is amazing to hear.
Yeah.
Well, okay, this is a question that I know a lot of people have been wondering for a good while. And obviously, you're not allowed to explicitly show works from other comic publishers, but does Gwen also read DC books or indie titles?
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense, right? Like, I don't think she could ever mention that in the comic.
Oh,
no.
of course.
But, like, yeah, of course. I'm sure she, much in the same way that, like, she likes to play, what was it, Car Crimes 5?
Yeah, which is clearly just Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, I'm sure she enjoys the adventures of Bat Hero as well.
And but does she strictly read Cape Comics? Because I know that she's really into all those. But does she read like some of the more non-superhero-esque books as well, or is she strictly just really love the high action?
No, she's definitely a fully rounded nerd. She plays D&D. She plays video games. She reads whatever she likes. Probably reads a lot of fantasy and YA novels.
Sure.
All the usual pack of fun stuff that we all consume.
Basically, if it's geeky, then she knows it.
Pretty much.
Okay. Now, this one is a slightly selfish question. Does Gwen watch Comic Drake?
I think it would only make sense.
That is incredibly flattering, and I don't want to put that on the spot.
No problem. No, I had another reference. Like, we threw in a reference to the Adventure Zone. And I was like, no, of course she listens to the Adventure Zone.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
She's going to make that reference. So, yeah.
Okay, I actually want to dive into more of the mechanics of how Gwenpool works as a character from the real world interacting with the Marvel Universe, and specifically the mechanics of how everything it happens. And this is something that I've actually been pondering over since probably issue 2, and is that does Gwen only have knowledge of Marvel media from before she got transported, or does she also affected by Marvel's sliding timescales? So obviously some movies are going to be coming out soon, like Black Panther, Captain Marvel, things like that. Will she retroactively know those to stay relevant, or are we strictly staying to that era whenever she first came in?
This is a great question, and we address both of those issues head on in upcoming issues.
All right, I'm glad to know I'm on the right track.
Yeah, I will say, I'm okay to say that, like, she showed up after Secret Wars, so anything that happened after that is a blind spot for her.
Okay.
And we're going to be that's going to become a problem somewhere in the fall, I think, is when those issues start to come out.
Okay, so kind of dealing with maybe the Secret Empire stuff. I know you're probably not at liberty to say specifically what.
Yeah, not specifically Secret. Right. And then, sliding timescale and retcons are going to start to enter into it as well. Basically, sort of noticing reality changing around her, and like for a great example, this isn't one that it comes up explicitly, but like she knows that Spider-Man has had like 6 origins, and like she might reference the one from the '60s. And,
Sure.
Spider-Man would be like, well, that's not how the accident with the spider went down. It went down like that. She's like, oh, right. Well, I like the original version better, or something like that.
Right.
She doesn't know what she's talking about.
A quick little throwaway joke. But that actually is really interesting, and it has me wondering about another thing. I could have sworn I wrote it in here. But as a character that originates from the real world, does she kind of have any sort of actual powers in a sense? Because as a regular human being, I know that you as a writer, you do have some sort of impact on the Marvel Universe. Clearly, you write multiple titles, and you have left your footprint on it. But as just a regular person who consumes them, does her presence kind of alter things as well? I know we've started to get into that a bit in recent issues, like when I think it's going to be an iconic scene with her in the hospital bed looking at all the different versions of herself in the panels. But how does that really affect things?
Well, let's see. It sounds like there's a couple different angles to your question there. So, first off, yes, she is already affecting the Marvel Universe as, she has these crossover appearances where she like asserts herself as this person from the real world, and that does affect things. But like her being a normal person who is now in the Marvel Universe, who has less power over it than I do as a person who is still in the real world, is something that comes up.
Okay.
I do not ever want to put myself as a character in this book.
Sure.
Listen, loved Grant Morrison showing up at the end of his run on Animal Man, but I don't think I'm going to do that. But like, it's this sort of general idea of like, the people in the real world can affect the Marvel Universe maybe more than the actual characters in the Marvel Universe can, is the thing that comes up. And then as far as actual powers, like the fact that she can now physically step out of a comic book panel, it plays a pretty big deal.
I'm very excited to see where that goes.
Yeah, that's a real evolution of the character coming up.
Okay. Well, since Gwen is such a unique character, does she have any unique problems that you run into as a writer? I know you've already touched a bit on that, where you have your own gaps in comic knowledge, because of course, who can read literally every book ever? And
right.
and you have to go with a different approach for her as well.
Sure. Well, I have to fake that sometimes. Like I'll just have her state with confidence that she knows like someone, and it's not something that actually happened. Like I think in her Howard the Duck appearance, she references some Hydra plot that like did not exist, but she's like, oh yeah, I read about that, and I was like, no, it didn't happen. Or like the thing when she like fights the Sentinels and she says they have the same pattern of attack from the video game.
Yeah.
And, like, it's like I don't think they had that pattern, but like,
that's fair.
Video game characters have patterns, so like it makes sense. So like sometimes I have to smooth around the edges of where that knowledge actually plays and where it doesn't. And then like there is like one of the bigger challenges is that like, because I've been writing her since the beginning, I kind of get to make more decisions about what happens to her than say somebody writing an older character might. Like I can have her have actual genuine change, which is very exciting, but it also means that like I'm kind of escalating things to this point. I'm not used to the cycle of continuing to of like going back around to a status quo.
Yeah.
And so like we're escalating to this point where I'm starting to wonder if I'm going to like run her up to a cliff, basically.
Write yourself into a corner in a sense.
It pretty much, and that's I don't have a solution to that problem. It's just something that I'm worried about further down the road. Yeah.
That's tomorrow. Chris is a problem, not today.
Tomorrow, Chris's problem. Yeah. Today's Chris just wants to write a cool page.
Sure. Now, I actually am really interested in how she did kind of fake that knowledge of a Hydra plot. So in a sense, does Gwen kind of act like one of those people who wants to look like they know everything, and they kind of pretend like, oh yeah, I've totally seen this show, even though she's maybe only heard about it in passing?
I could see that making sense, but it's never an issue that's come up. I've never had to write a scene where like she had to fake knowing something, but I could totally see that happening. Like somebody's like, well, Gwen should know what Galactus's secret weakness is. It shows up in Ultimates 2 or Ultimate Squared or whatever, and she's like, I didn't get a chance to read that. I could totally see that happening, but it hasn't come up yet.
That's totally fair. Well, what are some major differences between writing a webcomic like Dr. McNinja and something licensed such as Gwenpool?
Well, I mean, Dr. Ninja, I didn't have to answer to anybody. That's a big one. I do have to submit outlines very, very far in advance on Gwenpool, and oftentimes I'm juggling stories, just improvising based off of which characters I'm approved to use. Like I said, the Bullseye MODOK example is a good one. When I wrote Longshot Saves the Marvel Universe, I had the entire thing written around the Living Tribunal. Until, as I'm writing the first issue, they call me and like, oh no, it turns out True Living Tribunal's gonna die. You do it with somebody else, and I had to rewrite it on the spot. But that said, also, on Dr. Ninja, a lot of it I would write the page and then draw it and then post it, and then have a kind of an idea where it was going, but it was very much making it up as I went along. I've written quite far into the future of Gwenpool. And so that's a big difference.
Well, are any of these constraints like actually helpful and make you think outside the box? Like, obviously, we can go back to Bullseye and MODOK, but has it actually been like generally beneficial or more hindering as a writer?
I mean, I've always find I don't think I've ever run into a situation where it didn't end up being beneficial. I think working within constraints is very important and very useful. That might just be having a sunny outlook on it, though.
Sure.
I'm sure I could see like not getting my way on something and then storming off and declaring it ruined. But I'd prefer to make it work, and I'm usually happy with what turns out, and it's easy to look back and credit it to the events that forced that to happen.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Now, I actually, we touched a bit on it earlier, but recently the series has been diving into Gwen's life before being transported into the Marvel Universe, and in it you show a lot of her disconnect with reality and the general apathy to the mundane, like, day-to-day life stuff. So is there any particular reason why you focused on this particular theme of escapism?
Well, I mean, I needed, at the most basic level, I had to come up with some reason why somebody would want to jump into the Marvel Universe without it being an overly traumatic past. I think that's getting a little bit tired. So I kind of just was like, what is... I think like the most extreme I got was like, oh, she dropped out of high school. Like, so yeah, I wanted it to, that is what comics offers, is escapism. And to see what it's like for someone to take it very, very literally, I think was a fun little experiment to do. I mean, that said, when we first started the comic, I didn't know how she ended up in the Marvel Universe. I figured that was too big of a deal to try to explore 10 pages at a time in the back of Howard the Duck. Yeah. So we just decided to put it off. And then I eventually kind of came up with... I kept hinting that there was some sort of dark past in her home life, and I was, as we got further and further along, I was like, all right, we should probably go show what that was.
Yeah. And that actually ties in super duper well with the last question I have for you, which is, how has your understanding of Gwenpool as a character evolved through writing all the different books, the holiday specials, the backup appearances, and everything?
How's it changed? Well, I always knew that I wanted to start her off as very irresponsible and cavalier, particularly about other people's lives in the Marvel Universe. She starts off very much insisting everyone's fictional, none of this matters. She treats it like she's playing Grand Theft Auto. And I knew I wanted to start there, and I knew I wanted to have some sort of growth, whether it was she grows some empathy for these people, or goes further and further along, pissing people off until she becomes a supervillain. So it is interesting to be on the other end of it now, where, like, when I first started off, it was very easy for me to have her do terrible things like try to shoot that school bomber that Spider-Man stops her from doing, or shoot up a bank to stop it. It was very easy to write her as that person because I didn't know her. But now that like I've had her have that growth, it's way harder for me to make her do irresponsible things, and I know that she doesn't want to necessarily do them as much anymore. So it's interesting being on the other side of the plan and like completely feeling it very naturally.
Yeah, that makes complete and total sense. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I think I've learned a lot about the series and a lot of where your direction is going moving forward. And it has just been, like I said, an absolute honor to have you sit down and go more into this.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
No problem. Are there any projects you'd like anybody to go check out in addition to Gwenpool?
Well, we also have I Am Groot. Let's see. We've got the second issue coming out on June 28th.
Which has been great, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoy the setup for that.
Cool. Yeah. Well, the second issue, we really get into this weird world that Groot is set up on. We very quickly bring in other characters who can talk. Very important. Yeah. So That's about all I have going on. If anybody is in New York City, I direct live sketch comedy here. I direct a team called the Nitro Girls. They perform at the Magnet Theater.
Okay.
And you can check that out at magnettheater.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. And hey, thanks again.
Thank you.